Jonny Lazarus makes his first appearance on Locked On New York Rangers. We find out how JT Miller is fitting in with his new teammates, what the Rangers might be planning for the trade deadline, how the team morale is currently doing, and much more.
You're Locked On the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1246 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, and we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, yeah, very excited for today's episode. Going to go ahead and welcome in Jonny Lazarus to the show. He will be making his first appearance as a guest on Locked On New York Rangers. A lot of you, I'm sure, are already very familiar with Jonny's work. He does a great job covering the NHL just in general, and also focus on the New York Rangers as well. And I think certainly a lot of us Ranger fans appreciate all the work that Jonny does. But a lot of topics discussed today. You know, JT Miller, the trade deadline, who might be the Rangers' next captain, whether this team is going to make the playoffs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and play our interview with Jonny Lazarus. Enjoy. All right, let's go ahead and welcome our very, very special guest for today, making his first ever appearance on Locked On New York Rangers from Daily Faceoff, Mr. Jonny Lazarus. And Jonny, man, first of all, thanks for joining, doing the show here, and figure we can go ahead and just get right into it. Obviously, one of the bigger storylines for the Rangers and really the entire NHL season so far was the acquisition of JT Miller. One of those things where, you know, it's rumored for a couple of weeks, but then it actually happens, and it's like, wow, you know, this is not a drill. This is really happening. So just your thoughts on the Rangers bringing in JT Miller. Were you for it? And what was your reaction when it actually happened?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, thanks for having me, John. I appreciate it. You do an awesome job with the show. And, you know, I think, like, my initial thought was, you know what, they're trying to change the identity here, and that's a guy that can do it. Do I think it's great to have, you know, the term and the three centers at the age that they're at? I don't know if it's ideal, but sometimes you got to risk things to get the change that you want. And JT Miller is a guy that can come in and can shape an organization in a different direction or take them in a different direction. So I wasn't against it. I didn't think they gave up much. You know, obviously the first round pick is the one that stands out. Like, Chytil to me was a good player, but I don't think he was ever going to be, you know, that first line center that we needed, or maybe even a second line center. You know, I think he got his chance last year, and unfortunately injuries kind of ruined it. That's just the nature of the business sometimes, and it's unfortunate those things happen. But JT Miller to me is a difference maker and a game changer. And, you know, it's funny, like, the fans that are angry about the first round pick, fans always on the organization for the way they draft anyway. So what does it matter? You know?
Yeah.
But to me, I was all for it. I didn't think it was a big risk. And if you're getting JT Miller right now at 31 years old with the way he's, you know, played the past few years, I think it's a risk that you're willing to take, and hopefully it pays off. But, you know, we'll see. If not this year, maybe next year. I still think this team next year is going to look a little different than what we're seeing this year.
Absolutely. And I think we have similar takes on the situation. You know, with JT Miller, obviously, you know, he's a fiery, emotional player, and I think there's times where that's worked to his detriment, but more often than not, it's worked in his favor, and that's obviously something that's, you know, keyed him to becoming, you know, the elite player that he's become. You see these players up close and personal a lot more often than the rest of us do. So as far as, like, JT Miller in the locker room, I mean, have you gotten a chance to see him interacting with his new teammates? And if you have, you know, just based on what you've seen, what's that dynamic been like with him and, you know, his new teammates now?
Yeah, it's tough for me to get to practices out in Westchester because our morning show doesn't end until like 10:15, 10:30, and they usually skate at like 10:30. So I'm only really around for post-game and morning skate. You know, come playoff time, it might be different. But from what I've seen so far, I haven't been able to see a ton of interaction, and that's, you know, just me being fully transparent. The people that are there at practice every day would probably see more of that. But from what I have seen, you know, the one play that stands out that I've talked about in other shows, after Will Cooley threw that hit and Alex Pietrangelo, the first guy to come off the bench and skate across the ice to give Cooley a tap on the shins is JT Miller. And that's a little thing that goes a long way. It's almost like a sign of respect, like a, you know, JT basically telling Will, like, I got you, dude. Like, you know, that was good. for lack of a better term. But I think that stuff's important. Like, it goes a long way. And, I've kind of been using the analogy, and I'm honestly one of the people who hates the analogy, but I'll do it anyway. People sometimes, I don't know if they love to do it, but they do it often when you compare the NHL lifestyle or whatever to a 9-to-5 job. When someone steps into a new job or new company and they make their first sale, and then, suddenly they get a little bit more comfortable. I think JT kind of did that right away. He comes in, scores his first goal, and people, right away can make him feel a little bit more comfortable. He feels a little bit more comfortable. And, I know me as a player, any new team I went on, I didn't fully feel like I could almost be myself until I contributed. And JT's come in and done that right away. So I think his comfort level has shown a lot already early on. Whereas a guy like maybe Borgen or Vakanainen took a little bit longer to settle in. I know those are a little younger guys, maybe not Borgen. He's not that much younger, but I think that is a little bit of a intricacy that goes into it. But from what I've seen, like, the teammates have loved JT so far. I have no reason to believe otherwise. And I have no reason to believe that they won't love him the entire time.
Yeah, I think you hit on something that's very true there. Regardless of what sport it is and what level you're playing at, if it's hockey, I think getting that first point, maybe sometimes that first goal, it's kind of a little bit of a weight off your shoulders when you're on a new team. I mean, I know JT Miller played on the Rangers in the past, but that was obviously, a long time ago. Baseball, you want to get that first hit out of the way as soon as you can. So I think the fact that Miller kind of hit the ground running certainly, bodes well for him going forward. But, one of the big questions when Miller was coming over was, okay, well, how do we adjust the lineup? Who's playing with who and at what position and what line, and who's in the top six, who loses a spot in the top six. And, they tried a couple of different things. They initially started, though, with Panarin and then Miller at center, and then Mika Zibanejad actually playing right wing. And then this last game, they kind of threw the lines into a blender again. I mean, just your thoughts. Do you see like an ideal, line as far as, JT Miller is concerned? Or do you like Mika on the wing? Just kind of your thoughts on the new, lineup dynamic that we're seeing from this team.
Yeah, again, I worked the Princeton game on Saturday night, so I wasn't able to watch the Columbus game, so I didn't see what the team looked like in those lines. I watched highlights, but you can't really gather an opinion from watching highlights. But for me personally, like, I'd love to see JT Miller get a look, honestly, in between Panarin and Lafreniere. I think Lafreniere has had, a pretty down year, and I think JT can almost, get that sense of life back in him. Whether it was signing the deal or maybe there's less to play for. I don't know what it is, and I'm a big Alexis Lafreniere person. Anyone who follows me knows that he's my favorite player on this team. But Panarin and Lafreniere work. Vinny Trocheck can adjust with anyone next to him, I think. And to get the best out of Lafreniere, maybe having a guy like JT would help. Either way. I also was interested in seeing JT and Cooley play together. I think they play a similar style. They're both heavy. They have skill. They like to shoot the puck. But I do like the balance of having them on two different lines. I like what Zibanejad was doing on a line with JT. So I do think JT can almost play with anyone. That said, I think you got to put him with the guys that you want more out of. And, I think right now that the number one forward you want more out of is Alexis Lafreniere, in my opinion. I don't know if that's like a overall consensus, but it seems to be a popular opinion as well. So if I was putting together an ideal line right now, I'd have JT in between Panarin and Lafreniere, and maybe keep Vinny with Cooley and put Mika on the right wing of that line. To me, there's so many different combinations you can try, and the best players are able to adjust with anyone. But I don't know. What do you think? I'm kind of curious what fans and what you and other people would think about the lines. Like, I don't know if there's like an overall, like, this is what the lineup should be.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of touch and go right now. I think one of the cool things about JT Miller, I mean, he's a great, well-rounded player, but just the fact that he can play any of the three forward positions, I mean, right away, that just gives you so much flexibility. And, the lines look strange for this most recent game, the Columbus game, but given how they played against Pittsburgh, I feel like Laviolette probably felt the need to do something different. And it is kind of strange seeing somebody like VZ be a healthy scratch for 9 games in a row, then play on the top line. So that's a little bit odd. I don't know. I mean, I feel like Mika playing on the wing maybe kind of freshens things up for Mika a little bit, because, he's been struggling this season, off and on, played a little bit better recently. But
how do you look against Columbus? Because he played third line center, right?
Yeah, I thought he looked all right. The Kreider line, and they were with Kaliev. Kaliev had a goal, and then later in the game, if I'm remembering correctly, I think Mika scored a goal.
Yeah,
as
4-on-4
well.
goal, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was good. I mean, when Miller was first acquired, that was kind of what I was thinking here. Is like, okay, Kreider's already out of the top 6, and I'm not trying to like bash these players or anything, but Kreider's out of the top 6. I think Mika probably drops down as well, and then that's when they went with the Panarin, Miller, and Mika line instead. So, maybe you put Mika and Kreider back together, and you just
I liked how those three looked together, to be honest. I thought they were great. Panarin, Miller, and Mika. I had no problem with it. But
I think to your point, getting Mika going is a priority. Getting Lafreniere going is a priority, and I mean maybe that's even the line at some point. Lafreniere, Miller, and Mika together, right? And then you get the two of them rolling at the same time. Miller does seem to have that knack for like pulling a certain kind of style of play out of people, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah. So I think that I'm curious because there is a 2-week break now, and obviously they can go back to the last game or try something different in the new one. We will see. But I did want to ask you one other question here before we move on to something else as it pertains to the whole JT Miller trade. So Chytil, obviously one of the players that gets traded to Vancouver, and he's had a tough time. I think all Ranger fans, even now, probably still rooting for the guy. Seems like a really good person. Seemed to be well-liked in the locker room. Did you get that sense as well that Chytil was like, a popular player of the locker room from, whatever you've seen of him interacting with his teammates there?
Yeah, definitely. I don't think anyone had a bad thing to say about Chytil. He also had a sneaky, like, I don't know what the word would be, but maybe a cockiness to him. He was very confident in his ability to play. And, that was something that he kind of showed last year in the playoffs when he came back. He said being home, watching the team play, it was tough, but it felt like the team had something missing. And I think maybe he was hinting at himself, which is true. Like, I do think if Chytil was healthy last year in the playoffs, like, he could have been a difference maker, down the stretch in that conference final against Florida. I think, games 3, 4, 5, and 6 are all 1-goal games. I'm pretty sure the third line had like 2 goals the entire playoffs. He could have been a huge addition to the Rangers lineup last year if he was fully healthy. So, I have no reason to believe he wouldn't have been a key contributor. But yeah, from everything I gather, Phil was a really good teammate, not super loud, but always was candid in his opinion, which I obviously appreciate as a media member. I'm pretty sure he won the award like 2 years ago for
good guy.
Yeah, good guy by the media.
Right?
Yeah, that was before I really kind of joined the beat. So I don't really have any stories from that year. But yeah, last year was tough for him, and this year wasn't easy either. So, I don't know if he's a guy who like needed a fresh start per se, but yeah, I don't know. Just the depth chart and the way things were working out here. Like he had the second line center job last year, and then unfortunately injury just kind of took it away, and Vinny ran with it. So it's tough, but I guess I'm happy for him that he's got a fresh opportunity and can hopefully make the most of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's an interesting point that, Chytil, I mean, yeah, we got a little bit of him in the playoffs last season, but it wasn't like, Chytil at his absolute best because, obviously the guy hadn't played hockey for months at a time there. But I feel like those games against the Panthers last year, that series overall, I thought was closer than what people give credit to the Rangers for, because to your point, they were all 1-goal games. Game 1 was, I think, 3-0 final, but it was a 1-goal game late in the third period. Yeah. So, right there, man, they were right there. They had a chance, and maybe Chytil could have been the X factor, could have been somebody that really did make a difference there.
Yeah, I think the biggest game, I don't know if it was game 4. They jumped out to an early lead. I don't know if it might have been one. I know Vinny scored the first goal, like a 6 shot from the slot, and it felt like they were going to run away. I know it was the Reinhart overtime game. They tied it in the third. That game, I was like, oh man, I really felt like they were going to go up 3-1, and that obviously would have been such a difference maker. But we all know what really changed that series was Gustafsson taking that penalty on what would have been a 5-on-3, turns into I think a 4-on-4 or something. I don't remember the exact play, but I remember Gustafsson retaliating and the Rangers missing out on the opportunity for a 5-on-3 power play. But yeah, I don't know. It's tough. The best team won last year. I think that's something you can live with. But yeah, man, what a year last year was.
Yeah, how about it, man? Hopefully they can eke their way back into the playoffs this year. We'll see if it happens. And maybe go on some miraculous run, because the vibes last year were just off the charts, and it really felt like they were going to do something special. But in just a second, I'm going to keep talking to Jonny Lazarus here. We're going to shift our attention a little bit to the upcoming trade deadline, not too far away, just about 3 weeks or so, give or take, and what the Rangers' approach might be at that time. And we'll do all that and a bunch more in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Factor. Looking to optimize your nutrition this year? Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences every week, you can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle. Whether it's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto, plus Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfasts, and grab-and-go snacks to keep you fueled all day long. I love how Factor takes the stress out of meal planning. The convenience is unbeatable. No prep, no mess, just great food in minutes. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50off and use code LockedOnNHL50off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code LockedOnNHL50off at factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. All right, so we'll keep everything moving here on Locked On Rangers. Talking, of course, here with Jonny Lazarus from Daily Faceoff. And Jonny, trade deadline is obviously approaching. It's kind of funny, the situation the Rangers are in right now as it pertains to the salary cap, because they're going to have more cap space this year than they've had in recent years. Although you look at where they are this year, and it's not obvious that they're going to be buying at the deadline. I mean, on one hand, I guess you can argue they already have bought with JT Miller, but he's not a rental. He'll be here for years after. So I'm just curious, man, like, what do you think the approach will be? What do you think the approach should be? I've kind of been saying maybe there'll be soft buyers where they add but don't really go nuts. Just kind of your thoughts there on what the approach could be.
I still think they're going to make trades. I do think they're going to look to add, but I really think, and I've been saying this for the past couple of weeks, while I do think Drury wants to build a competitive team still for this year, I think everything is going in toward next year. And, I know I've also heard Larry Brooks say this too, because I think a lot of us are in agreement that, Shesterkin's contract kicks in next year. It's the last year of Panarin's contract next season. That is a year where you don't have time to waste. So if Chris Drury can, do this on the fly and put together a team next season that he feels can do it, I think that's what he's going to try to do. And one name that stands out to me, and I only have seen one other person say this after I had tweeted it like 2 weeks ago, and I'll credit 610 at Barstool. Bowen Byram is a name that I love. He's stuck in Buffalo right now. He's 23 years old, making $3.8 million, maybe a little bit more than that. He's an upcoming RFA. And, listen, I think if you can get a guy at his age right now, a puck-moving defenseman, a left-handed shot that can, come in and almost, take Ryan Lindgren's spot on the top pair with Adam Fox. Like, Bowen Byram's a good defender, too. And I don't know what the charts say about him, but, I imagine being in Buffalo hurts whatever charts you want to show. But when I watch this kid play, like, he skates well, he's physical, and I know he's had some injuries, but he's everything you kind of want in a hockey player. He's won a cup with Colorado. Like, I just love him fitting in with this blue line. And, I do think Ryan Lindgren's going to be on his way out, whether that's at the deadline or in the summer. So be it. So you're going to look for a left-handed shot. And then we got Drew Fortescue, I think, coming out of BC, who might need one more year. But the games I've seen and the things I've heard from people that watched a lot of BC, like, sounds like he's almost there and he's almost ready. So on the left-handed side, I think we're good. The Bowen Byram thing is interesting, though, because you might have to, separate from Braden Schneider. I don't know what that would look like. But, yeah, the deadline to me, I think the Rangers are going to try to add to the blue line and build out a blue line. Like, that's number one. And then, obviously, if Mika Zibanejad is going to continue to play the wing, maybe they go after, a Ryan Donato type of center who's going to be a UFA and just use him as a rental or maybe try to re-sign him for cheap. But to me, I think priority number one is adding at the blue line. And maybe that's someone more physical than Byram, like a Jamie Alexiak or Carson Soucy. But I think a left-handed defenseman is need number one.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, it's interesting the spot that the Rangers are in with their defensemen. And I kind of talked about this coming into the season. There's a lot of them there that kind of have something of an uncertain future with the team. Obviously,
yeah, just Fox and Morgan.
It's Fox and Borgen. That's pretty much it. Those are the guys that are signed. And you know what? I was going to ask you about Borgen a little bit later. So you mentioned him now. We might as well do it right now.
Yeah.
I think you and me were kind of on the same page here. I like the deal. You look at the terms. I think it was 5 years at $4.1 million. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's like one more year than you would want and like slightly more money than you would want. But to me, I think it's a good deal. I think he's overall just played a solid physical brand of hockey. Just your take on Borgen, because I know you've been a fan of him mostly as well. So.
Yeah, I've really only seen 2 glaring mistakes in the 20-plus games he's played here. Obviously, the one against Colorado stands out, and I know Lafreniere's caught a lot of the heat for the back check against Pittsburgh the other night, but I thought Borgen made the wrong read there, and I'll stand by that. But again, like that's the point. Like he doesn't make many mistakes, at least ones that are glaring. And getting a guy that is as consistent as Will Borgen, plays as physical as Will Borgen, blocks as many shots as Will Borgen. Like to me, people talk about Ryan Lindgren being a warrior. I think Will Borgen's just as much of a tough guy or whatever as Ryan Lindgren is. Maybe it's not as loud, or maybe Borgen hasn't been here as long to notice, but he's rarely out of position. He gets pucks to the net for the most part, besides Colorado. And he's overall pretty responsible and reliable. And who wouldn't want that on their blue line? He's 28 years old. Like he's in, what is considered probably the prime of his career. So signing a guy for 5 years in the prime and being 33 at the end of the deal, like I don't think that's even that old. That's totally fine by me. Would I have liked him more at 3.5? Sure. But that extra, $600,000, is it really going to be that much of a difference? Who knows? But I like it. I like Will Borgen. I think he's great here, and Igor loves him. So I think that's also really important.
Yeah, that might have even played into his hands a little bit, Will Borgen, when he was negotiating his contract. Hey, your franchise goalie loves me, so you got to keep me around, right? But as for, you mentioned Lindgren a second ago. We've kind of been talking about him a couple of different times off and on, throughout the episode here. But, I look at the Ranger UFAs and the 3 that could be on the move, Lindgren, VZ Smith. I don't know exactly how the Rangers are going to play this, but I feel like you were saying earlier, they could be looking at kind of a retool rather than a full-fledged rebuild. So, I feel like, we could see as many as like 2 out of those 3 players get moved before the deadline happens. I mean, it's hard to say for sure, but I mean, Lindgren's kind of the big one given, how long he's been here and, what he's meant for this team. But then, of course, obviously his play has slipped a little bit this season. So, what do you think? I mean, because I'm with you. I don't think there's any way he's back opening night next season. It just feels like the writing's on the wall. But I'm kind of torn whether he gets moved before the deadline or not. I think it might depend on the return. But just your thoughts on that. I mean, do you think Lindgren is here past the deadline this season?
So that's the one that's tricky. I don't know. I'm not even going to pretend to guess because, I asked Peter Laviolette 2 weeks ago, like, who has emerged as a leader since Jacob Trouba has left? And the 2 names he said specifically, he said the leadership group's done a good job. But he said 2 names specifically, and that was Vinny Trocheck and Ryan Lindgren. And, I'm imagining that this organization loves who Ryan Lindgren is as a person. I like Ryan Lindgren. He's always been kind, always willing to talk. His play, like you said, has obviously slipped, and he's become an issue. Everyone knows it. Everyone's talking about it. Nobody's shy about it. I have people in my DMs. The Rangers could win 5-0. Someone wants me to ask a question about Ryan Lindgren. Like it's every night. It's nonstop. Yeah. And for me, it's frustrating because I get why people are hard on him, but it's not like Lindgren signed here for 5 more years. They signed him for 1 year. It's not a long-term investment. So you can bash the guy all you want, but he's not really the problem for the future. He's a problem right now. But if this guy was making, $4.5 million for 5 more years, then I'd probably ask more questions about what your plan is for Ryan Lindgren. That's kind of how I would approach it. Right now, it doesn't seem like it's something that has to be asked all the time. That's just me airing out my dirty laundry. I get so frustrated with the fans every game.
No, it's all good, man. I get it. Yeah.
But again, like I just it's so hard for me to say because I try to separate what these people see in the person and what they see in the player, and I can't imagine the Rangers pushing for a playoff spot and thinking that Ryan Lindgren is going to help them get to where they want to go just with how he's played this year. But on the flip side, I do know how much they've loved and appreciated his game in the past. So I don't think they just want to get rid of him because they know he can be valuable in those moments because of what he's shown before. So it is, it's a tough one to figure out. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know the answer, to be honest. But those are just my thoughts. I don't know what you think, John, about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. Like Ryan Lindgren, I've said in the past, like he's been one of my favorite players throughout this entire era of Ranger hockey. I just love the toughness, the physicality, the fact that this dude will, he's not the biggest defenseman out there. It's easy to forget that because he throws the body constantly. He's always blocking shots. I think he leads the NHL in blood spilled on the ice per season. If that's a stat, I think we can. I think we can put that out there. So I think it's one of those things where two things can be true at the same time. Where okay, Lindgren, yes, his play has slipped this season. And he's had some rough games and some rough stretches. But you can also, as a Reindeer fan, I think, like, look at this and appreciate the fact that, okay, maybe part of the reason for this is the style of play, the brand of hockey that this dude has been playing for this team for the last half decade here. And the guy takes a beating every single game, has these injuries, comes back. Somebody, I don't have the name in front of me, but I did an episode talking about Lindgren, YouTube comment section. They mentioned that, 3 years ago, that 2022 first-round matchup against the Penguins, Rangers go down 3-1. Ryan Lindgren wasn't in the lineup, and the Rangers were getting obliterated. The Crosby line was just doing whatever they wanted. Lindgren comes back for Game 5, and what happens? The Rangers come back. Now, it wasn't.
Didn't he score the empty netter too?
I think he did. He definitely had like a moment offensively in that run too. I think, yeah. So
I think that was his only goal, but he scored an empty netter in one of those games against Pittsburgh for sure.
Yeah, man. And then like I remember the series after that against the Canes, the Rangers were down 2-0. They win Game 3 at home. And then Max Domi tries to go after Lindgren after the game, and Lindgren's like throwing down with him, and that got the Garden all fired up. And I'm thinking, like, man, this is like where the series turns. And then they win that series too. So it's tough to see him struggle like this. And hearing you say that he's a good dude on top of everything else, you want to see him do well. And I don't know, man. We might have just talked each other into hoping that Ryan Lindgren stays past the deadline. I don't know.
I don't personally. I don't. Yeah. But I'm not gonna say like I don't want to ship the guy out of town, but like I just don't think he's what they need right now. I don't. I think he was helpful for what they needed in the past.
Yeah.
But I think Fox has like maybe almost outgrown him. And I'd like to see him partnered with somebody else, on a top unit.
Well, that's the thing too. Like they clearly have respect for him, but I'm not sure that like if you trade him and put Zach Jones in the lineup, which I know they're hesitant to do, but like I'm not convinced that doesn't immediately make the Rangers better.
It won't.
And
it won't.
Plus, you don't think Jones would make them better?
No, I just don't think like taking Ryan Lindgren out is the immediate like solution.
Okay,
I know it probably helps the cause, but I don't think it's like some magical, fix. Listen, I mean, the truth is, one player can make a difference, but one player doesn't make all the difference. And I know people will look at all the Ryan Lindgren charts and say this guy basically stinks. That's what I get every night in my mentions. But one game with him out of the lineup, I just I'm curious to see what it would look like. I would love to see them sit him for one game and just see what it looks like if it's that different. Like then I'll be all right, maybe he is the problem, but I just don't find one player to be the problem. It's just not how hockey works.
No, I'm with you there. I mean, it comes down more to the brand of hockey that I think the Rangers have played collectively this season than the struggles of one player. But yeah, I figure we'll keep everything rolling here in just a second. I want to also ask you, Johnny, about the next Ranger captain, who that might end up being. Obviously they don't have one right now, so we'll get to that and some other stuff here in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. The fact that Wonderful Pistachios is a complete protein providing all 9 essential amino acids. Also, the satisfying crack of opening each shell, it's like snack meditation. Whether you're running between meetings or dropping off the kids, Wonderful Pistachios are the snack that works as hard as you do. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right, talking once again here with Jonny Lazarus from Daily Faceoff. And Jonny, one more thing that we definitely have to talk about. A couple more questions here for you. But the next Ranger captain, this is something that years ago on here was kind of a hot button topic when they went without a captain for a couple of years. And here we are again. Sooner or later, they're going to name a new captain. I would imagine not until the start of next season at the earliest. But all signs are kind of pointing to Trocheck based on just watching these guys interact with each other. You mentioned some of the comments that Peter Laviolette made in response to your question not too long ago. So is Trocheck the guy? Is that the sense that you get as far as where the Rangers are going? And would he be your pick to be the next captain?
Yeah, he was my pick last year. I think Vinny's one of those guys, and Peter Laviolette says it all the time. Like, he touches every aspect of the game, plays power play, PK, 6-on-5, 5-on-6, 4-on-4, 3-on-3. Like, he is the first guy off the bench in essentially any situation. Not afraid to block shots. Had a big one, I think, in that win against Boston late in the game. He comes up with a big block, and he's always, the first one to talk to media when stuff's hard too. I know that fans find that important. Not every guy is comfortable doing it. Vinny is always, one to be outspoken when he feels the need to be. And I think that is a little bit important, but he's a guy also, I think, that drags teammates into the fight. I know this hasn't been his best season compared to last year, but, from being around the room, he seems to be the guy that everyone kind of gravitates toward. And, I think that's what you want in your captain. The guy that everyone wants to be around, the guy that everyone wants to go to battle with. And, JT obviously came here because of Vinny as well. And I think if they're, going in that direction with JT and changing the culture and what those two guys bring, you have to look at Vinny Trocheck being the one to, be the magnet or the glue that holds everything together, to get a guy like that to come here. So I think it's a no-brainer that it's Vinny Trocheck. I don't know who other people would vote for. Is there another name that comes up? I don't know who else it would be.
Yeah, the more bold one, I think, is JT Miller, but to me, it's a little bit early for that. And yeah, I mean, there's just too much volatility. Now, I wouldn't mind JT maybe being an alternate captain next season, and you've got that relationship that he's got with Trocheck. And if we do have a situation where JT, his emotions get the better of him and it's becoming an issue, then I think Trocheck in position as the captain can maybe sort of reel him in a little bit. I mean, do you think that dynamic could work with the two of them? Yeah.
1,000%.
Yeah. So, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go.
Oh, I was just going to ask you, man, I've got kind of another hot take here that I've been talking about on my podcast as we're talking about the leadership group right now. And I'm not so sure that Chris Kreider is back next season. I don't think it'll happen before the deadline, but his full no move is down to a partial no move. And of course, when the memo went out earlier this year, it was Trouba and Kreider. Those were the two names that were really floated out there. We saw what happened with Trouba. I mean, what was it? A couple of weeks before he was gone after that. So I don't know if that's a hot take for you. Do you see a world where the Rangers, though, decide to move on without Chris Kreider next season, via a trade or however they might get it done?
He's a tough guy to move on from, especially I think this year with, the well-documented injuries he's had. I think the scratch against the Devils, while it was looked at as a healthy scratch, might have been Kreider just needing the day off, the game off. It's tough. And I don't think his value is all that high right now. He's got 2 years left after this one at $6.5 million. He's not necessarily the most well-rounded player. Obviously he's good at the PK still. He's good at the net front and the power play still. But if you're looking for a guy that's, going to come in and help your team at 5-on-5, I don't know if that's the guy making that much money. So it's tough. It's going to be a hard thing to move on from. I'm sure it's a conversation that will be had. But if I had to put my finger on it, I would think that Chris Kreider is still here next year.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it'd be a hard move to make because obviously he's somebody that's been here for about a decade and a half at this point and has had some big seasons, had some, clutch playoff moments as well. I just feel like, that memo that went out earlier this season was a little bit on the ominous side. And just seeing his name at the top of that made me wonder, might his days be numbered here? But I guess we're kind of just in wait and see mode as it pertains to Kreider. Something else I wanted to ask you about too, Peter Laviolette, there's Ranger fans that are upset with him. Then there's, some fans that think that it's more on the players than it is Laviolette. And then there's people that want to blame Drury. I mean, you know how it goes. There's always, somebody backing Laviolette or going against Laviolette as far as the fan base is concerned. I personally would like to see him back next season. I just don't think you can keep changing coaches every 6 months or so, which is what it feels like the Rangers do. So, I mean, what do you think? I mean, he survived 4-19 earlier this year. So I think if nothing else, he'll at least finish out this season, but I'd like to see him back with a retooled roster next season. Just your thoughts on that, if you think it should happen and ultimately will happen.
Well, I also think they don't want to pay two coaches at the same time. He has 1 year left on his deal. I do think he'll be the head coach, come start of the season next year, unless they feel like they have someone else they absolutely want, which I don't know if that's the case right now. But I would put a lot of money on it that he doesn't make it through the end of next season. I think he'll be there for opening night, but the second something goes wrong next year, I do think he's the first, domino to fall. And I will credit Chris Drury in that sense, because the lowest hanging fruit, in the NHL is firing a coach when things aren't going well. So I guess credit to him for hanging on and trying to turn this thing around. And, Peter Laviolette's obviously one of the most well-respected coaches in the NHL. But, I don't know. It's so hard to look at this team and last year's team and, say they're so well coached. Like, I don't think they're poorly coached, but for whatever reason, the Rangers weren't dominant. They weren't dominant last year. Even at the top, even winning the President's Trophy, every conversation is like, why is this team good? Their metrics aren't great. Their 5-on-5 numbers aren't great. What makes them good? We all know it's the power play and the goaltending. But again, to this year's point, if you don't have the personnel to coach the style that you want to coach, it makes it very hard. And I know that firsthand. Like my freshman year at UMass, our coach Carvel wanted to play a certain way. We didn't have the guys in the locker room that can do it, and we sucked, and it was hard. Then he brings in the guys that can do it. And that's, what makes coaches look good is when you go out and recruit and you find the guys that can play your style well. That's the successful teams. Paul Maurice finds success in Florida because those guys bought into how he wanted them to play. Hard way to play, but you find the right guys that can do it. And I think that's just how I feel about Peter Laviolette right now. Like, I think he's done a fine job, but I don't think he's done a great job. I don't think he's done an excellent job. I don't think he's done a bad job. Do I think he's the Jack Adams winner? No, by any means. But do I think his job deserves to be gone? No. But that's also an issue, right? Because you want the guy who's gonna come in and be the right guy. I'm not saying I'm getting lost in my thought now, but I'm thinking back to what I was saying like 2 weeks ago. I'm sorry if I'm rambling on here.
No.
But
you're good, man.
Like for me, I was saying when the Rangers really started playing poorly, it's not the coach's fault. The players aren't trying. But as that continues, at what point does it become the coach's fault for him not being able to get them to try? Like at some point, it does fall on the coach, right? Yeah. So it is a bit of a catch-22, like where you can so clearly see what you're watching and know that the players aren't playing well enough. But at some point, someone has to come in and get them to play better. It's tough. I don't know. How do you feel? Because I'm getting lost in my own brain right now.
So no, it's all good, man. I mean, it's been that kind of season that'll do that to you. This has been a roller coaster to say the least, and frankly, maybe a few more downs than ups as far as this season has gone. Yeah. But for me, like early in the season, when they first went into that tailspin, and again, 4-19 is what they ended up going in that 23-game stretch there, that lovely stretch of hockey that this team played. But for me at the time when it first started, I'm looking at this and I'm watching the players and I'm watching the effort that just isn't there. And then you look at some of the moves and some of the moves that Drury had made and some of the moves that he didn't make, even going all the way back to last year's trade deadline, and some of the ways that he handled certain things in the offseason. So for me, I had the players at the top of the list most to blame, then probably Drury, then Laviolette. But to your point, at a certain point, this thing has to turn around. And for a while, maybe it sort of looked like it was, 7-0-3 over a 10-game stretch. And, they have been better in 2025 than certainly they were at the end of 2024. But I'm with you, man. I feel like, at a certain point, when you're struggling like this and you go from best striker in the league to on the outside of the playoffs looking in, at a certain point, I mean, some of that has to fall on the coach, right? He can't be, no coach can be completely blameless in a situation like that. So I'm curious to see how it plays out. And I thought you touched on something interesting a minute ago there, that they might go with Laviolette to start next season,
Mhm.
but then pull the plug, midway through the season, a third of the way, whatever it might be. And that's the last thing I want them to do. Like, decide in the offseason, is he your guy or not? And maybe that has to do with how the rest of this season, ends up, and that's fine. But either commit to him or get out. Like, none of this midway in between stuff where, we'll see how it goes, and they fire him after like 6 games. I mean, because that would just make them look dysfunctional.
I think that's what's gonna happen.
That's probably what they'll do, right?
I think that's more likely than not.
Yeah.
To be honest, yeah.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes, but that to me is like a worst case scenario. We will see.
Mhm.
So I'll let you get going, man. Do you have time for a quick lightning round?
I want to ask you a question too.
Oh, absolutely, man. Yeah,
because I try to keep as much of a pulse on the fan base as I can.
Sure.
And I've always said, like, there are so many bad teams in the NHL that when your team's playing good, even if you don't think they're good enough to win, like, you still should be happy, And I feel like Ranger fans have kind of like almost chosen that, like, or decided that this year isn't it, and they don't want to like buy in at all, and we're just gonna like throw it away. And to me, I'm like, we're so lucky that we're not Buffalo, we're not Chicago. Like, when they play well and win 2 games or win 3 games or 4 out of 6, like, enjoy it. Like, again, I'm speaking as a guy who's never seen his team win a Stanley Cup, but like, that 2-month stretch of going to the Garden, I consider myself to have the best job in the world. I get to go watch the Rangers play, every night and talk hockey. And I'm telling you, going to the Garden, can I curse on here?
Sure.
I was so miserable watching this team play, and I was like, thank God I don't cover a team like the Sharks or a team like the Sabres, because when you're sitting there and you have to come up with questions to ask these guys when they know they're playing bad, first of all, they don't want to answer the questions. They don't want to talk to me. The last thing they want to do after a game is talk to me. Yeah. And I'm like, what can I possibly say to them or ask them where they can just, answer candidly,
Right.
It was
especially when they're just losing and losing and losing and losing. Like, I mean, we saw the Rangers go through a stretch of that this season, but that's basically like what the Sharks do the last bunch of years, and the Sabres and all those teams like that. Like, what do you say at a certain point as a reporter? And then as a player, what do you say back? It's
so hard.
The vicious cycle,
Yeah. And like, I had this debate again. This is me as a just perennial loser. I had this debate with Dan Powers from the Empty Netters podcast. And I was like, I guess the debate was like, would you rather have your team go to 10 straight Stanley Cup finals or be in dead last for 9 straight years and win the cup the 10th? And I was like, honestly, I'd rather have hope for 10 straight years than be hopeless for 9 and like get the job done. Like, I think we talk about Buffalo Bills fans, at least they're hopeful every year,
Yeah. No, they have a good team every year. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, they believe constantly. Like, I like believing. I do. I'd rather believe than be hopeless. And I feel like a lot of Ranger fans right now are hopeless, and I hate seeing that.
Well, even this season, man, because like, things obviously haven't gone great, but like, I had this thought the other day where like, if the Rangers actually do make the playoffs, like, I don't know how far they're going to go, but I've said this every year since I've been watching hockey. Like, if you get in, you have a chance, because
I agree.
We've seen 8 seeds win the Stanley Cup. We've seen, like, even when the Rangers won the Cup in '94, Vancouver was a 7 seed that year. And we've seen Montreal a few years ago. They sucked in the regular season, and they make it to the finals. So you just never know for sure. And I think, Igor, not his best season, but he is that X factor, and we've seen how good he can be in the playoffs. So if he gets hot for a few games, you never know what can happen. And, to your point, it's more fun to have hope. And even if the Rangers like sell off some pieces at the deadline, I'm still going to be rooting for them to get into the playoffs. I don't care about I don't care about them picking like 12th instead of 14th in the draft. Like, I want to see them get into the postseason, and hey, let's have some fun with it. Let's just get in and see what happens, right?
Yeah, there's nothing better than playoff hockey.
Yeah,
it's not.
And I want my team in
one of the positive ones. I like that you're one of the positive ones.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. So I figure, we'll let you go in a minute. We've talked for a while. 42 minutes here. It's just kind of flown by. It's been a lot of fun. Yeah. Do you have time for a quick lightning round? We'll just ask you a couple, real quick questions here. First thing that pops into your mind.
I got as much time as you need. I'm having fun, and I'm a night owl anyway. So
absolutely, yeah, I know all about that. So, okay, so your all-time favorite New York Ranger.
Oh, first instinct goes to Sean Avery. He was my childhood favorite player. I got to meet him a couple of times. My dad drove me out to like Westchester, that him and Valaquette did like a autograph signing when I was like 13. I had a picture of my BlackBerry with Sean Avery when I was a young kid. I was actually at the game, like sitting probably 20 rows up behind the net where he did the screen on Brodeur.
Oh, no way. You were at that game.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
I was
awesome.
at that game. I was in like 7th grade, and I remember pointing to my dad saying, like, what the hell is he doing? And like 2 minutes later, Scotty Gomez, sure enough, feeds him for like a backdoor. I guess he was kind of in the slot, but a good little feed. And, I went to the game where Avery came back for the first time when he was on Dallas. Like I was obsessed with Sean Avery. Like I really was.
Yeah.
I just loved, but even me, like as a young hockey fan, like I loved everything that came with the game. Like I loved the walk-off interviews in between periods. I loved the post-game stuff. Like I just loved everything about hockey. And I thought Sean Avery was like, he just encapsulated all that. He was a showman, and being in the Garden, it's kind of like, I guess, what a 13-year-old kid would feel right now about Matt Rempe. Like, he's just theater almost. And he was my favorite. How about you?
No, that's a great comparison. All-time favorite. I mean, that's a tough one, but having been just barely old enough to remember the 94 Cup win, I think Adam Graves is my guy. Just a
how old are you?
Player. I'm 38. So
I thought you were my age.
You're like what, late 20s?
I'm 28. Yeah, I thought you were my age.
Okay, so you were saying middle school for Avery. I was in college when that was so there is a little bit of a difference for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I was like just barely old enough to remember that, and Adam Graves, I think, was my dude at that time. Would love to have him on the podcast at some point, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's a good pick.
Yeah. How about your current? I feel like you answered this earlier in the episode. Your current favorite Ranger?
It's Loff.
Yeah.
Which is funny because like he's the guy I probably talk to like the least on the team.
Yeah.
He just doesn't like doing media, I don't think. But it started like 2 years ago. I saw the skill there. And I loved, honestly, the fact that he was a number 1 overall pick that would like throw the body and would play a physical style. Like, I remember that 2022 playoff series. He was obviously playing on the kid line, third line minutes and stuff. But, I remember thinking like he was a bull out there a little bit, and you don't really see that from a first overall pick. And, something I talked to Frank Vetrano about, like the day after Lafreniere signed his extension, because the Ducks were in town and we were talking to like his former teammates and stuff. And Frank said, it's great to see a kid earn it the way that Lafreniere did. He came in with a lot of hype and had to adjust his game early on. He wasn't given the keys to the kingdom right away. And he almost like embraced being that third line player instead of pouted with it. Where I think most first overall guys would sit there and be like, oh, like, why me? Why am I in this position? But I don't think Lafreniere went about it that way. And, I also do like that he's kind of goofy. From what I have seen and what I have interacted with, he's not overly too serious, which I like personally. Like, I think, you're in the NHL, you should have as much fun as you can. And just obviously the year he had last year, like I said it, I think it was around this time. It was like February 22nd. He had that game against Dallas. I don't think he had a point, but he must have had like 7 grade A chances and set up like 4. And I was like, this guy's going to be a 100-point player. So I my whole career now is invested in Alexis Lafreniere having at least one 100-point season, so I can just laugh at everybody and sign off of Twitter forever.
Yeah, there it is, man. That's your mic drop moment when that happens for sure.
Legit.
Okay, so 2 for 1 here. Favorite, because I know you played obviously hockey in college. So your favorite sport to play other than hockey, and your favorite sport to watch other than hockey.
I don't know if they're different. They might be the same answer, but I guess it's changed now. I mean, I love pickleball. Like, does that count? I don't know if that counts.
That counts. That's a sport.
Or like growing up, I guess. I wanted to be Stefan Marbury until I was probably 11.
Okay.
I'd get home from school and I'd throw on my rollerblades, and once it got dark out, I'd come inside and throw on my Knicks jersey and my Knicks shorts, and I'd play basketball in the basement. Like, I'm a huge Knicks fan. All I care about really is hockey and basketball. And then I've become a pretty big Ben Shelton fan in tennis. I love tennis. I love watching tennis. That's new though. That's only like 3 years for me, because I worked at the Tennis Channel as my last job, and I was there for like 2 years. So I became a huge tennis fan there. But to watch, it's probably the Knicks. And to play, I guess I would say tennis or pickleball.
Tennis is a good time for sure. I haven't really gotten into pickleball yet, but sooner or later, I know. Yeah, it's definitely going to happen eventually. All right, another 2 for 1 here. Favorite hockey movie, and I don't know if you're a gamer at all, but do you have a favorite hockey video game?
I honestly, I probably played Xbox like 5 times in the last 3 years, but like I grew up loving Xbox. I mean, I play Xbox all. My like thing in college, I'd throw a podcast on my phone and I just play Xbox with no volume on. Like, that was my whole thing. Favorite video game, probably like whenever the first NHL was where they incorporated the Ranger goal song, like they had the goal songs in the game.
Okay.
And I think they had like the actual Doc Emmerich and like maybe Eddie O as like the broadcasters. Like it was actually them, and it might have been like NHL 16. I want to say
sounds about right. Yeah.
16 or 17. That was probably my favorite game. And then what was the other question? Favorite hockey movie?
Yeah.
I really love Mystery Alaska.
I've never seen that, and I really want to.
You haven't? Oh, yeah. You have to.
Because I know the Rangers are featured in it, right?
Yeah, they are. I'm wearing the Miracle like hoodie right now, and obviously,
there you go.
Yeah, Miracle is like a classic one. Mighty Ducks are classic, but Mystery Alaska always like stood out to me. I just thought it was so different and so unique from the other hockey movies that I'll go with that one. What I feel like I'm missing a big one though. What's
Well, I know a lot of people would say Miracle, which that's up there for me for sure. I think I would go Mighty Ducks though. Yeah.
What's another one that I'm missing? I feel like I'm missing a big one.
I don't know. I mean,
Youngblood maybe.
Slapshot,
Youngblood. Yeah, those ones.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Isn't there a movie where like a monkey plays hockey? Like Ed?
Yeah, it's MVP. Most valuable primate or something like that.
That's it. That's the one. Yeah. All right. So
what's your
one more for you, and then I figured we can call it a night here. Your favorite Ranger playoff moment of all time. You could have been in the building or not. Either way, it's all good. Favorite Ranger playoff moment.
Man, I just say all of them.
You could say all of them. Yeah.
I was so lucky to be at so many games. Honestly, the first one my brain went to, just because I'm gonna get so much for this probably, but like when Patrick Kane scored that goal in New Jersey, I thought they were winning the cup. I was just laughing in the press box. I was like, oh my God, like this is it. This is the year. We just beat them in their own building 5-1 in back-to-back games. Like who is stopping this team?
Yeah.
Patty got all the criticism, with his hip, and he scores that goal in that moment. I was like, this is just like, I thought that was so cool. But like I was at the step-on game. I was at the St. Louis overtime game against Montreal. I was at honestly, the best game I've probably ever been to was Game 7 in the Pittsburgh series. Like that was such a back and forth, like, heart pumping game.
Yeah.
And for Mika to tie it up late, Panarin to win in overtime, like the city after, I was out. It was a Sunday night. I was out till 3 a.m. and I walked 30 blocks to the East Village, and I met like on East 9th and 2nd. I saw a guy in a Ranger jersey at 3 a.m. We high-fived. We were like, let's go.
Yeah.
Like it was nuts. That was probably my favorite. What was yours?
So, I mean, I wish I could say the 94 Cup, but like being 7 years old, I don't think I really understood like how special it really was. So
what's the best game you were at? What's the best playoff game you were at?
I have not seen a playoff game in person, sadly. I know. It needs to happen sooner or later for sure.
We got to get you there.
Well, I got to get those media credentials, man. Then I'm in for free and I can talk to the players after the big win. But I mean, as far as like being in person, I mean, I saw Lundqvist get a shutout really early in his career before anybody really knew who he was. I think they beat Florida like 4-0. What's that?
He tossed the stick after 3 stars.
I believe he did. Yeah. So there was that. I mean, but as far as like a playoff win, either the 2 Game 7 overtime winners, either Stepan or I think I would go with Panarin just because it was the Penguins and they were down 3-1 in the series, and because no Ranger fans like the Penguins. And
weren't they down 3-1 to Stepan too, though? I think they were down 3-1 that series.
They were, but I didn't dislike the Caps as much as the Penguins. So I think the fact that it was the Penguins just added to it for me.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. And I mean, just like Stepan, I just went nuts when he scored, and when Panarin scored, I don't know if it's because I'm older or what, but I just basically collapsed when that puck went in. Just pure relief when that puck went in the net there. So
which one was more heartbreaking for you, Henrique or Martinez?
Ooh.
Do you remember where you were for both?
Yeah, I was for Martinez. I was watching at home with my wife. She was my girlfriend at the time. For Henrique, I think I was just watching by myself. I'm gonna say probably Martinez, just because I would have loved to have seen. I mean, it's the finals, first of all.
Yeah,
and also just to see what Game 6 in the Garden would have been like. That place would have been going absolutely insane, and I would have loved to have seen that. But how about you? Which one of those two was worse for you? Now I got to know.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know if I've ever even like told this. No one's ever really asked me about these 2 goals, but I technically missed them both. So the Henrique goal, when I was in 10th grade, I'd go outside. We had a tennis court, like a communal tennis court that I'd like roller skate on. So I'd like roller skate between periods, come back in to watch the game. I just missed the first. It was like 2 minutes into overtime, so I missed the first 2 minutes. I came in, the Devils were celebrating.
Yeah.
Like, oh my god, what the hell happened? And then the Martinez one was my prom night. So I was in the Uber going home, and I think Twitter was a thing in 2014, but I got some like ESPN notification that the Kings had scored. So I just like, it's sober. I like those two heartbreaking moments. Like I found out like basically, but it's I know how like we feel as Ranger fans when those moments happen, but I don't have like that like instant moment, which is so crazy to think about. But
in a way, I mean, maybe you kind of saved yourself from those moments.
I don't know.
But then finding out with a notification on your phone, maybe that's worse. Tough. I mean, I don't know. I didn't live it that way, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But
literally at prom, like we heard Boyle scored, and everyone was like going, it was nuts. Different times,
It's funny how you remember too, like all these plays. It's just funny how you remember like all these different things you were doing and who you were with when all these things happen, good or bad.
Yeah, if we had streaming on our phones now, like if I was going to prom this year and the Rangers were in the Cup final, I'd be sitting at the table the whole time watching the game. Like I wouldn't be talking to anybody. Like it was almost a blessing that I couldn't like sit and watch the game.
No, I'm with you there. Forget about dancing and whatnot. The Rangers are on, so yeah. But hey, Johnny, listen, man, this was a ton of fun. Really appreciate you coming on the show. I figure we can call it there, but definitely happy to have you on. Somewhere down the road here.
Yeah.
Maybe if they get into the playoffs, we'll do a quick episode then, and if not, maybe in the off season or something.
Yeah, whatever you need. Again, like you do a great job.
You too, man.
Which I respect a lot too. It's hard to be consistent doing this stuff. So, great job. Where do you live, by the way?
I'm over in Connecticut, in Bethel. So, how about you?
I'm in Manhattan. I'm in the East Village, but
okay, very cool, very cool.
Where's Bethel?
It's kind of Western Connecticut. So, like, I can be in the city. It's not too far. Like, I can get to the Garden probably in about an hour or so, depending on traffic.
I'm gonna find a way to. I hope they make the playoffs. I'm gonna find a way to get you playoff tickets.
Oh, that would be amazing, man.
We gotta get you to a playoff game. I can't believe you've never been to a playoff game.
Well, we gotta hang out for a game or something, man. Or maybe do a podcast on location or something somewhere down the road. I would love to do that.
Yeah, 1,000%. I'm dead serious. I'm getting you to you gotta experience the Garden, man. Come on.
Oh, of course, yeah. Absolutely. And you do a phenomenal job too, man. I know we I think we had a Twitter interaction a while back where we talked about doing this, so I'm glad we made it happen.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. Thank you, John. Seriously, this was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Ranger fans, thank you guys on behalf of Johnny and myself for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys next time.